This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
Take action. You will see so much upside once you really connect with your people and support them with their growth. For me, this is a much greater mission as opposed to like signing up to the product. Just do one thing better with your teams and your people will thank you forever.
I got to tell you, I've been looking forward to this for a few reasons, Eddie. One, I feel like if I were in your shoes and the roles were reversed, we're like the worst girlfriend to date. And it's like, are we ever going to actually like go on a date and like we've talked, we've texted back and forth and we've emailed. And now our two companies are finally starting to make some progress here. And I love what you're building at SKOR. And I got to tell you, this is the Courageous Podcast, so I guess I got to go there. There have been times when I'm like, should we have created our own courage score?
Mm-hmm.
And what we learned this last year was like, no, we need a third party. Like, it's kind of, there's too many ways that you can trick it into like, look at how great we are and our own proprietary software that we're not going to tell you anything about is going to tell you how great we are. So I love that we are finally figuring out a way to work together. But look, why don't I kind of turn this over to you? First of all, that doesn't sound like a East Coast accent for a guy living on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, firstly, Ryan, thanks so much for having me. I'm a huge fan. Since we met, I guess about 18 months ago or so, been a huge fan of all the work you do and the writings, the blog and the podcast. So a real privilege to be on here. So thanks so much for the invitation. And yeah, I'm not from Brooklyn or Long Island, as some people may guess. Originally from the beaches of Sydney, so Aussie at heart. And moved with my wife and boys 11 years ago. So now I call New York home. As crazy as it is to say out loud, because we didn't plan to come for 11 years. That was a 2-year adventure, but I'm sure you've heard that story before. And now kids are growing up and American accents in the house, and we call New York home now.
I would have lost a bet if you would have told me you were moving to the States and going to New York, because we get some Australians and South Africans here in San Diego. So what took you to New York?
It certainly wasn't the weather. I'll tell you what, it's been like averaging like 15 degrees the last 4 weeks here, and that's Fahrenheit. That's not Celsius, right? So it's been horrific. And as I look outside, there's snow everywhere. So I guess the spirit of adventure and the entrepreneurial mindset, I guess, I co-founded a company in Australia in 2012 and 2014. We just had a lot of traction in the US with a consumer brand. And my wife and I were like, hey, we never lived overseas. The kids are young. Let's give it a go for a few years. And, because the eldest was 12 at the time. So that's what brought us to the States and New York. And, as I shared before, the rest is history. I exited that business about 2.5 years ago. But yeah, that was the catalyst to coming to the States and I guess living out a dream adventure, all the above, living here now.
So the obvious first question, which I'm going to cede, but then give you another question before we answer this question, is did you have the idea of SKOR when you left your last life and you're like, how do I get to this? But we're going to put a pause on that. And I also share that because, my intention of writing my book on Return on Courage was I thought I was writing a business card for my last book. Not a business plan, but that's what kind of happened was you go into it. I went to it thinking it was one thing. It turns out to be something else. All right. Here's the question before the question. Like when you get to New York, are you like just culture shock? Are you like, this is amazing. Every food I have ever wanted, every language you could ever hear, it's all there. Like it truly is the melting pot, right? It's the center of the universe, right? As they say.
Yeah.
Is that how you felt?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, we were so excited coming here, and we don't live in Manhattan. So I have 4 boys. So my wife and I had aspirations of living in Manhattan, but putting 4 boys in an apartment, if we could even afford it, just wasn't an option. So we live in, I guess, the suburbs of New York in Westchester County. So about, 35-minute, 40-minute commute into the city. So not too far at all. But we have a house and lots of space, and there's not even sidewalks here, right? So just to give you context of where we live. But yeah, New York was incredible, and really moving to this country was incredible. But just so you know, and a lot of people take it for granted to live here, like we had to come here and start from scratch, like new health system, new education system, social service system, credit system, like even getting a car, a license, we were treated like, no credit and 18-year-olds. Right. So the first couple of years are pretty rough. Like, I guess, like moving to any country in the world is always hard. But because you've got this sort of, I guess, energy and positivity because you're in New York. I mean, it's not as if I've moved to, some town in the middle of Iowa. Not to say that that's a bad state, but
No disrespect to Iowa. Right, of course.
Definitely not. I look forward to going there one day. It is very different to New York. And like Sydney's a big city, so we get a big city. I mean, Sydney itself is like 5-6 million people. So I definitely get it. But New York, to your point, is a different level. But yeah, I think the energy and just of it all really drove us. And frankly, have kept us here. So yeah, and do you want me to move on to the second part of the question, or hold that for now?
No, I still have another question before we get to the question.
All right, let's do it.
And so, in some ways, I like, instead of just jumping into Eddie Geller, like I like we're just getting to know Eddie a little bit here. So a couple weeks ago, I did something for the first time with the podcast, which is I went solo and recorded my own pod of me, which is different than like, I don't do that. I try to stay in my lane. You know what I mean? And like, your lane as a podcast host is, I'm trying to like let people get to know you and understand what life is like for you. But I am curious, Eddie, and I talked about this on that solo podcast. I made a comment about the U.S. as a brand today. As a brand guy, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like I just saw this thing about somebody in England talking about the World Cup and that they want to boycott the World Cup because it's in the U.S. coming in this summer and like we've lost sight of what the world's biggest party is supposed to be about. So again, this is not a show about politics. It's not going to be a show about politics. But I am curious, when you do ring back to Sydney right now, or they ring you, how fast into the conversation are they like, what the hell's going on over there?
Yeah, look, I mean, I definitely get that, but mostly from my friends as opposed to my mum. My mum focuses more on the weather and the snow as opposed to anything else. I think my father-in-law, leans much more into the politics. Look, as you know, media misconstrue and manipulate everything, right? They take a 5-second snippet here, 5-second snippet there, put it together, like you think you understand what's happening in the US because of these 2 snippets. And as you know, nothing could be further from the truth. And that happens here and anywhere, not just from Australia. But look, I think Australia's got its own problems. So, and there's no perfect culture or country today. That's for sure. But I think this country is amazing in so many ways. Does it have its problems and issues? Of course, right? Lots of issues and problems. But hey, it is such a wealth of upside and opportunity and willingness to like give it a go and support like backing yourself. And that's probably the biggest thing I find culturally. It supports the people that want to back themselves the most in any other culture I've been to. Australia is a great culture. It is the opposite. It's much more what's called tall poppy syndrome. If you're too successful, they want to cut you down. And I'm not saying there's not obviously lots of successful Aussies that have done well, but US is like, no, they want to prop you up. And actually, if you failed along the journey, that's actually kind of better. And talk about the courage angle. If you failed and talked about it, you're basically 10x more than if you don't talk about it at all. So it's just, this country is incredible in many ways, but obviously, does it have its problems? Of course, can it be better? And I don't want to lean into all those issues, of course, but there's a ton of upside this country offers that I don't think enough people here focus on.
I hadn't heard of tall poppy syndrome, which I will absolutely give you lots of love and credit for in other shows. What came to mind were One, and then I'm thinking of two past guests. One, Mandy Salas, who's just an amazing story of being thrown from a car in her teens and is now paralyzed from the neck down. She was on her way to being like play soccer at Stanford,
Wow.
and she's in my backyard. We grab coffee from time to time. Mandy always says, "What you focus on gets bigger."
Yeah.
Right?
Love it.
And she's an expert. I think she's resilience focused. But like, yeah, guess what? Like you can put your energy on the news and then, you know, you're going to spin yourself out. And by the way, I'm not here to say I'm tone deaf to what's going on right now or that it's okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to choose to stay locked in on what I can control. I'm betting on myself,
Yep.
you know, what I focus on
Totally.
hopefully gets bigger. Right. And then two, Ron J. Galati, who just wrote How to Be Bold. He's a professor at Harvard, came on the show maybe a few months ago. When we stopped recording, and this is what reminded me of this was your comment about like in Australia, if you get too big, watch out.
Yeah.
One of the things that we are talking about doing is a study of courage globally
Nice.
and looking at how different countries, like, is courage receptive? In Australia, what is it, like too much courage? We've reached the bar. Japan on legacy and honor, and or is that a place where courage really plays? So, hey, here you are now in an environment where you've created this condition. You've bet on yourself. You've made this choice. So you sell the business, and again, I'm very curious to learn, when did you fumble into the idea of SKOR? And we're like, oh, shoot, I'm suddenly really passionate about this. This seems interesting.
Yeah.
I got to bite my lip for a year, or like, give me some color on how it came to be.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a small backstory, I think. So in all my companies, I had a company in Australia, or a consulting services company, I had about 110 people. And then this other company, which I brought to the States. I've always loved the people culture side. Like I've always loved that piece. I've always loved, you know, how do we create the environment in which people thrive? When people ask me my role, I said, that's my job. If someone makes a mistake, if we don't hit my goals, it's all on me. Like I always took that. I don't know if that's my upbringing with my parents. My mum was both parents were entrepreneurs. You know, dad not so successful, mum you're quite successful, relatively speaking anyway. But I guess I always loved, it's all about the people. It's all about the team. So I guess that's always been in my DNA, I would say. And then, and my last company, we used to have these traditional engagement surveys like most companies offer. And it was just very frustrating. You spend all this time on this data that you get from the people and you're expecting to make improvements and changes, and it got nowhere. Like we got nowhere. And I guess, so after finishing my last company and like figuring out what's next, I must have interviewed 50 plus CEOs, and I just asked them about culture and people and engagement and how do you build high performing teams. And then I kept on asking the same question. They all struggled with, oh, your culture's important. I had one guy say to me, Ryan, we did culture last year. We're not doing that this year. I mean, it's just crazy. And it's, so many CEOs just don't get it around. It's all about their people. And it just led me to believe that you look at the data with Gallup that, engagement's all-time low. So all these signs are sort of screaming to me like, there's got to be a better way. I'm passionate about it. Actually, I'm not sure. Have you heard about the term called an ikigai?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I think I found my ikigai through this journey that basically is all about this personal passion and love for the space. The world needs it. I can create something that's financially prudent, and I'm passionate, right? So it's all those areas. And so this whole area that I double down on around the SKOR is like this: how do I create this language? How do I create this sort of measurable, where again, I always love the synonyms. It's like, let's get an Uber. You're going to Xerox that, you're going to Hoover that. So I'm like, well, I want to create a brand. That's why I created the brand of SKOR. I want people to say, what's your score? And you're going to say, well, we're an 85. And like, wow, you guys are incredible in the industry. Or someone saying I'm 35 and struggling. Like, there's a barometer in which you understand. So, and then again, constantly iteration, constantly getting feedback. And, it's evolved a little bit. So over the last 18 months, no surprise as we get product market fit, but the whole area is around, I think, and the last thing I'd say before I'll pause, because I could probably talk about this all day, is I think my entire journey, Ryan, of 30 years in building companies and teams and work and playing sports my whole life has all brought me to this. And through the ups and downs, because I had failures as well as some successes, I couldn't have been at this position if I hadn't had the fails and had a couple successes. So I'm so grateful because this is my favorite out of any one that I've ever done and the one I'm most excited and passionate about.
First of all, that's the most Australian thing you've ever said. I know why. You probably have not failed at all, but you had to say it.
Oh, no,
because
definitely.
Of,
I've got a bunch of failures. You know, I'll think about failures.
No, tall poppy syndrome. I'm calling you out. No fail. You've had no failures.
Oh, I've got a lot of them.
Dropping it into the podcast.
There's no successes without failures, as people then talk about. I've got a ton of them, and like some raw ones that were pretty awful, and some nearly bad ones. I mean, I've got a bunch of stories. But anyway, leave that for another day.
No, we're very aligned on it. It's just all a big experiment.
Yeah.
It's just a big It's to me. It's like if you don't put the lab coat on and put the goggles on, that's when there's a problem. Like you gotta figure out what you want to try out,
Yeah.
right, and see what works and iterate. And also, I probably should have said this. So SKOR is spelled SKOR, and I'm bringing your team and Eddie into some of our work. I'm so excited to see how, we have 4 values at Courageous. The 4th one is change, and so. I just don't see how you could do work that strives to shift a leader or a team and then not measure it. And so, we've been on our quest looking for someone like you for a while, Eddie, and we're excited to finally, hopefully get this thing off the ground, see where it takes us. You talk about, some teams are high performing teams and then some teams think they're high-performing teams.
Yes.
Right? But there's a ton of just team dysfunction.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what your data says. How bad is it out there?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would say it's pretty bad in terms of, and when we talk about teams, just to sort of call it out a little bit, team is a dynamic construct, right? The whole company is a team, a function is a team, a location is a team, leadership team is a team, right? So they're all different teams because, as we all know, we play kind of different roles in the context of our daily life. And that needs to be kind of measured in how you are as a leader and leading. It could be very different to how you are a receiver of someone else's leadership, right? The whole, leadership versus individual contributor, as we all know, you go to one environment you're following, and you just deal with that leader for what it's worth in other environments you're leading, right? So the whole context is a really dynamic, important concept around teams. And probably the biggest challenge we find in teams, so it's overall, to your point, is team dysfunction, but it's typically grounded in leadership blind spots. Because what's happening is that, the stats are 70% of a team performance is influenced by the leader, right? That manager influences 70% of the outcome of that team. It's not 100%, it's 70. Now, not to say the team members, individual contributors don't have, obviously things to contribute towards, over 30%, but it's still a large portion of the manager. When we say blind spots, it's how the manager or the leader is turning up and behaving versus how the individual contributors think that they're turning up and behaving. So if the manager's saying X, they're doing X, and the leader and team members saying Y, well, that's a blind spot. That's a perception gap. And if the team members are saying something that's not the reality of what the manager's reality is, well, that's an issue. So one great question we ask, which often gets called out, is, this is so simple, as we ask the manager, every question is 0 to 10. So it's super easy. 0 being never, 10 being always. And the question for the manager is, I walk the talk in my actions and decisions. Now, typically you ask a manager that, they're going to say, oh, I always do what I say I'm going to do. That's a
10.
9 or a 10.
10.
Easy. Exactly.
Yeah.
You ask every single one of the team members, my manager walks the talk in their actions and decisions, and that's nearly always 6 or below. And it's kind of crazy. So hold on a sec. Here we are. If the leader's going, well, why isn't the team always doing what they say they're doing? Why are they always delivering on their commitments, etc.? Well, it's got to start with you. And the classic, well, you got to walk the talk yourself. And so that's one blind spot. Recognition is another key blind spot, where managers think they're recognizing their team members, and the team members saying they never recognize a team member. So blind spots is a big area that often gets elevated with our assessment. But there's lots of other things, but they're probably the biggest ones because they're the biggest aha moments for managers. And the aha moments are the ones for the good leaders, are the ones that can acknowledge and take action and be courageous to make change. The worst ones are the ones that are flippant and go, oh, that's not the case.
Eddie, I'm curious on the recognition side.
Yeah.
Because then again, I'm like, oh, okay, Ryan, let's slip on the leader shoes here with my team, right? So how often are you seeing a leader go, well, I'm really good at complimenting Billy when I'm one-on-one, but wait a minute, in a public forum, I'm like complimented him on one-on-one. Like how often is it, are we looking at, or is there something different when you do it behind closed doors versus when everybody sees that you're being recognized?
Yeah. Look, I mean, one-on-one is great as long as it's specific and not like, oh, Billy, well done. That's kind of useless. It's got to be, Billy, the work you did on this client job really had a massive impact. You really helped me out. Like it's got to be specific, right? So the one-on-one is useful for sure. But as they say, recognize publicly, criticize, or critique you privately, right? So actually you get a 10x return if it's public, right? So whenever we do these assessments, one of the recommendations we'll often give to clients is a template for a weekly team meeting. And in that is a standard agenda for shout outs. Has to be, and shout outs, and the thing is, just so you know, Ryan, recognition is not a leadership only role muscle. It's a muscle that every team member needs to flex because it's a job of everyone. Just like in a team sport, right? Everyone high fives. And this is actually a great one I often share, in basketball, NBA, right? Whenever someone's doing a free throw and they miss the free throw, have you noticed everyone gets a high five? When was the last time you high fived your team for missing? It's such an interesting concept. Like, and often when we work with teams, I'm like, put up your hand if you high fived someone for missing. Like no one puts up their hand. And it's so interesting when someone, these are NBA players, professionals, gets $1 gazillion a year and they still high five. And so those types of things, recognition, I think is a critical one that publicly is the best, of course, and everyone should do it if possible.
See here, I thought that was more about routine and ritual. You know what I mean? Like no matter what, make, miss, whatever, you go through the routine, 5, 5, 5, 5, go back and do your thing, 5, 5, 5, 5.
Yeah.
So, but I love, yours is way smarter. I like your take more than mine. But yeah, like, are we actually creating high five moments with the team?
Yeah.
Like, is that actually happening with the team?
Yeah, I mean, and we often talk about recognition. It should be many, many times a day. Obviously, in a remote setting, it's hard. Slack could be a tool or something like that to do it, but team peer-based recognition is really powerful. That often is not really well done. Like everyone, like a lot of organizations we talk to, oh, we have employee of the month, or we do a quarterly town hall. We recognize it. I'm like, who recognizes it? Oh, just the managers. Well, that's useless. It should be daily and everyone. And it's the muscles we call, high impact, low effort, which is actually quite rare to get because, you could spend 10 seconds, Ryan, and have such a big effect on someone. And to tell me some other muscle that you could do that with. Everything else takes more time, but recognition is one of those easy ones that we always harp on about that should be flexed more often.
So when you talk about SKOR, what's the log line? Like what do you got? Like how would you, we're in an elevator, here we go. How do you explain it?
So the way it works is basically, 15 to 20. So the pitch, if you're in an elevator, depending on that, I'll do the elevator and then I'll do what it means is 15 to 20% of an organization's payroll gets lost because of team dysfunction. We identify this dysfunction and fix it. So we're all about basically assessing the behaviors of teams, diagnostic of the team, and then giving you an action plan for improving it. And we do it through the lens of these 7 muscles of high-performing teams. Obviously, the measurement of SKOR. So every team gets a score out of 100. That's the whole metric of a piece, and we benchmark that. And then we give you an action plan on how to fix it. So it's all about, so a lot of the language you're talking about is like, it's the leak in the team and how do we fix it? And there's so many, I guess, elements of that, but we do it through a very simple assessment. It takes 5 to 6 minutes to complete. 50 questions for leaders, 35 questions for team members. So it's all about strong signals in a very strong direction, and then be able to get an action plan and moving forward. So that's the high level view of SKOR. And I guess if you really boil it down, we're connecting people finally to profit, which has been a big gap out there.
You said there's 7 muscles. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 7 muscles of high performing teams. Yeah.
Dare I put you on the spot? How many of the 7 do you think you'll be able to rattle off?
Well, I mean, I can attempt to rattle off all of them. So we have accountability, right, is a key one. We have transparency, number 2. Healthy conflict. Often it's the weakest muscle in teams is healthy conflict. Number 4 is a growth mindset. Learning always. 5 is adaptability. Willing to adapt with what's happening out there. 6 is recognition, like we talked about just a few minutes ago. And 7 is goals and rewards. And actually, if you look at sports, that's exactly how sports work. Sports live through these muscles all the time. And we say all teams need these 7 muscles, and you need to flex them at different points in time.
And then SKOR itself, from what I remember, look, hey, no one likes alliteration like this guy, but like the 3 C's, right? Aren't there 3 C's?
Yeah, cohesion, clarity, and courage. And that's where really we bonded around the courage aspect. And look, I mean, courage, as we all know, is like the vital ingredients of muscles to the ebbs and flows of the journey, right? We always talk about this. And just for context, cohesion is like core values, common beliefs, connect with one another. Clarity is about understanding where we're going as a team, direction, accountability, goals. And courage is all the things but it's all about like the muscles that you need, like growth mindset, transparency. Actually, again, you can see this overlap between them all.
So if I get a score out of 100,
yeah,
is it like 33 on cohesion, 33 on clarity, 33 on courage, or how does that look?
No, it's even better. It's 30 on cohesion, 30 on clarity, and 40 on courage. Courage is the most.
I love that. This concludes the show, guys. I mean, the expert is telling you what the lead is.
Yeah.
Why? So
I'll tell you why. Because the data proved to us that if you're low courage in a tough time, you're dead. If you're low courage in a good time, you'll just survive. But if you're high courage in a tough time, you'll sustain, and high courage in a good time, you'll be, a 10x top of the world in terms of against your competitive set. So the courage is like the trump card almost, if you will, that if done well, you lead the pack for dead. And it all talks about all the things you speak about: transparency, growth mindset, like learning, like like one of the questions we ask is, leadership teams share news when it's good and bad? Because people love sharing good news, but people struggle with sharing bad news, right? But that's a courage aspect, right? You got to lean into the courage. You got to be vulnerable. So yeah, a lot of the questions we're asking, and that's the same thing like we ask about the healthy conflict. There's also a connection to courage. We ask a question around how comfortable are you to speak up in a room when you disagree with what's said, or you disagree with the manager. How comfortable are you? Never, always, right? And if that leader hasn't created a safe environment to speak up by everyone, well, you're losing out big time. I think our stat out there, how sad is this, Ryan? Half the people in our workplaces are afraid to speak up.
I mean, I ran into some like LinkedIn study that said 95% of people surveyed would rather bite their lip.
Yes. It's so sad.
So like, wait,
so sad.
This is connected to what I was gonna share. So like, well, here I'm sharing it. So we're sharing it. But like, basically, I thought going into this experiment called the Courageous Podcast that you would have people who saw themselves as courageous. And what I've learned is that most who come on the show don't see themselves as courageous, but they do see themselves as truth tellers.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
They see themselves as like, they're not afraid to tell the truth. They're not biting their lip. And I've said this before on the show, but in some ways it's pretty sad that just telling the truth is now an act of courage.
It is. It is.
Just keeping it real and having the conversation, the good news, the hard news.
Yeah.
And like, if you're a leader And your job is to create the conditions inside the business to have this conversation, good or bad. And if you work for that leader, your job is to help them muster the courage to create that environment
Totally.
where they can share.
Yes.
So wildly fascinating stuff, man.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much here. And look, I mean, look, I'm not going to assume you probably be way younger than me, Ryan. But I'll say when I grew up, my parents were like, if they don't come, or my dad especially, if he doesn't come home and say it was a great day, something up. Like his version of courage was holding it all in and solving all the problems himself, right? But as you know, we've all learned, like, no, courage is the opposite. Like, you want to come and actually be who you are. Like, no, I had a bad day. I had a bad meeting. It was a tough environment. Like, oh, I had a great day. Like, if you're not sharing the specifics with your children, then they'll think it's not okay to share with you when they've had bad days, right? So again, like, I think at a time when I grew up was obviously what your parents did is very different to what we do today. And I think so few people out there sadly have not adapted and learned. And that's why I'm just an avid learner of this stuff. You have to adapt and be the person you are for the people you are around you, not the person who you're told you have to be. And that's the whole connection with courage, I guess you're calling it, but it's just, being who you are in the time in which with the people around you, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, there's so much shit my dad didn't share with me.
Yeah.
And it's not his fault.
Of course.
Like, nobody shared with him.
Yeah.
Like how he had to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I make up a lot of words, Eddie, and one of my favorite ones is figure it out ability.
Oh, I like it.
My dad had figured out ability. Like, he really
Very good.
There was no sibling for the first 8 years of his life. And I mean, I love my grandparents, but my grandfather spent a lot of time in a card room. And
Oh my God, that's the same with my dad. The difference with my dad and his sister, my dad's passed away now, was 9 years. So it sounds similar.
Yeah. Yeah. And saying he was he still works. He's a lawyer and he's 83. And
Wow.
the classic Sanford Z. Berman moment when he'll say, and by the way, there's a sense of pride with what I'm about to share.
Okay.
Right? So he'll like, well, when I interview new lawyers to come work at the firm, they're always like, well, what are the rules? And I always say, there's 2 rules. Say hello to me when you get in and say goodbye to me when you leave. And for my dad, that's a badge of pride, right? Like, he's telling you he's going to be there. I'm going to be the first one in and I'm going to be here and come say goodbye to me when you leave. And look, that's not my version of what success looks like.
Yeah.
But I definitely learned hard work from my dad, and he showed the way. Live. What's interesting though, I think a word that if we were going to create a word stock market, I mean, I think how I feel about courage. Okay, so we don't need to do that word. But I think the word shared is like, I'm buying low on that word. Right. And I think when you think about share, you think about like, well, what's our market share?
Yeah.
Right. But like
Sure.
the idea of like shared accountability,
Yeah.
shared purpose, sharing knowledge, right? Sharing with your kids. I don't know if you heard this back in Sydney, but I'm sure you did. But like, they always said, like, are you even like, you're opposite of your parents usually.
Yeah.
And it's like, it toggles.
Yes.
You're more like your grandparent if you're
Yes.
not like your parent. I'm hoping that my son, at least, maybe my daughter's different, but I'm sharing with him
Sure.
all of the messy. And Eddie, this is the big secret also, like, this podcast is a share.
Yeah.
Like, with my daughter and my son. Like, this is a little time capsule moment for me. One of the reasons I do this is maybe they'll, in 2070, when I'm no longer here, that they can at least have a little bit of me if they so choose to hear, like, all right, yeah, go for it. Be courageous, take a run at it. So there's the sneak. There's my sneak.
I love that. It's kind of like, I guess, another way I thought about it is like, we give our kids what we didn't have, right? Or we give our kids more of what we thought was right to give. It's like all those things. It's like, you didn't have things you want to give to kids, but then at the same time, like, I mean, we grew up really well. We didn't have the internet and all that stuff growing up, and we were fine. And sometimes I think they have too many things today and too much entitlement, and we've gone the other way too much, right? So maybe they'll go the opposite. Who knows? But as you know, like we're all brought up in a different environment. We're all influenced, by our environment so much, so you can't really tell. But I think the fundamentals are the same. One thing that I've always tried to do, and actually I learned this from a Peloton instructor, I still think about it every day, is like,
Which one?
I think it was Selena Samuela, who just had a second kid. It's you versus you yesterday. That's your journey. That's it. Forget about the world. Forget about everyone around.
Yeah.
You versus you yesterday. And even that is just been helpful to me growing up, because, bullied a lot as a kid. I didn't learn that. But in the last 5-10 years, I've learned that it's like, doesn't matter. Everyone's got their own race. Forget about everyone else. It's you versus you yesterday. That's it. That's your race. So there's so much there in my mind. And, I think I always tell the kids, it's like, don't worry about everything out there. Although it's hard to tell a teenager not to, or to ignore what's happening out there. But that's what I try to instill.
Well, it's also like I think it's a really hard time to be a kid right now.
Yeah.
We were way off topic on courage, but like of the show. But I will say, when I went to school, and when I was in high school,
Yeah.
I had teams in sports to protect me. But the minute I left school, if I had a bad day or somebody was, a bully, look, I got very lucky. There's only like one time that I was able to like matador a lot of that behavior.
Nice.
When I got home, I was home. There was no like, for at least from 4 p.m.
Yeah.
to 8 a.m. was my time.
Yeah.
But now, because of phones,
Yeah.
you guess what? School doesn't end.
Totally. The world is completely, it's merged. The hodgepodge all together.
Right?
There's no stop.
Only one.
Yes.
There's only one. So it's tricky times, man. All right. In the spirit of courage, there's no courage without fear,
Yes.
right? There's no change without courage. Where's one place right now in your world where you're like, oh man, I'm a little nervous about this? Give me something in your business right now where you do have fear and you're just not sure how it's going to go, but you keep thinking about it and you're hoping for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate the question. Look, I mean, I think the number one thing I always think about is like how our positioning is landing. And that's why, just recently, even before the podcast I was sharing with you on new positioning, it's on our website. And I literally came up with it the weekend before last, and it went live last Thursday. So 3 days, right? So I can't move any faster, right? So I think my biggest fear is just, what people think and how that lands and how it gets received. And does that develop traction? And are we going to grow, or am I going backwards? So it's like, that's the biggest unknown for me. But like, I got to constantly hustle, constantly, speak to people, get feedback, iterate. Like, it's funny, I had lunch just before with a friend, and I go to him, I've just tweaked the message. He goes, again? I go, what? I did it 6 months ago. That was 6 months ago. I'm like, dude, like, this is an early stage startup. If I'm not tweaking and iterating, I'm failing, right? I need to listen to what's happening out there now with AI at the speed of light. Like, you just can't ignore the signals. But yeah, my biggest fear is this constant, I guess, figuring out is, are we landing? Because I think what I'm doing, like the category I'm creating, this profit leaking and connected to people, is a gap. Like, it doesn't exist today. Like, measuring people and profits and performance and all that stuff is a gap. So I'm leaning into this area, and I'm self-funded. So it's all off the back of my back pocket. I'm not interested in investors for all sorts of scarred reasons in the past. And that's kind of like fueling me, but at the same time as it presents fear, for sure.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing so freely. And, the irony is they always tell you, well, are you treating yourself like a client, right? Like, are you actually treating yourself like if you were your number one client? How does that change this? So, okay, let's run you through the 3 C's, Eddie, right? Like, what I'm seeing is a pretty high score on courage.
Yeah.
Because we feel like there's a pivot. We're probably maybe a little lower on clarity because it's new, and right, so maybe it's not as clear to everyone because it's been changed in the last 6 months. So it's like, oh, right? Clarity is a rarity, and maybe there's something to be said for, I always say repeaters make believers,
Yeah.
right? Because like our team's looking for consistency. So here's a moment in time where maybe they're feeling like, well, I'll say it again, repeaters make believers, right? Like we have this new idea, and that's people's brains are looking for outs. So they're looking for inconsistent cracks.
Yeah.
And then the cohesion component's like, okay, once you operationalize all this, is it really working? Is there a potency?
Yeah.
Right, from dysfunction to a functional team.
Yes.
You're a dysfunctional hunter, right? You're here to find it and fix it. So
Exactly.
awesome stuff, man. What do you want to leave this group with? Those who are listening. You've been on a pretty cool journey. You moved from Sydney, right? You came to New York. You might have Googled it, but you hadn't lived there,
Yeah.
right? And here you are. You've been an entrepreneur. You're now in this new journey.
Yeah.
You're passionate about culture and people. What do you want to leave the group with?
Yeah, I appreciate the context of the question. Probably the number one thing is just do something about it with your people. Like take action, because you will see so much upside once you really connect with your people and support them with their growth. And again, lean into these areas we talk about, like recognition and conflict and adaptability and a growth mindset. Like I really think, and maybe it's just me being flippant, this is easy stuff, I think, but I know a lot of people don't find it easy. But the number one thing, if they could just do one thing, pick any one of these muscles and just do one thing with your team. Even just talk about it with your team. Hey, everyone, we don't think we're really good with this conflict thing. What could we do better? Or this recognition thing isn't very good. Like, let's talk about it. Like, just do that. Like, I don't want, for me, this is a much greater mission as opposed to like signing up to the product. I just want to take everyone through this journey of a message around just do one thing better with your teams, and your people will thank you forever.
Hey, I'm going to thank you for coming on the show, Eddie. Thanks for joining. Guys, check out GetSKOR, GetSKOR.com. That's where you can find Eddie's magic and see what the score is all about. The score is all about. And here's to clarity, cohesion, and courage. Keep at it, man.
Amazing. Ryan, thanks so much. I love being on the show. Thank you so much.
We'll have you back. We'll do it again. We'll figure it out. Episode 501, 502. We'll figure it out.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.